guys, this is Ash Kumra, co-founder of DreamItAlive.com. Today's guest is an extraordinary individual. He is actually a phenomenal men's coach. He is Zat Baraka. Zat Baraka specializes in sex and relationships to help the modern man become the best version of himself. He also works with couples, and we have a special treat for you folks because Zat is actually going to share some insights with the DreamItAlive.com audience on how men can become the best versions of themselves and how men and women can create the most meaningful relationships. So, Zat, how are you today?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Ash.
Great. Well, Zat, I'm curious. How did you get started in this field?
Well, I started just on my own path, working on myself. I think like anyone else, just kind of through trial and error in life and, coming up against a lot of challenges, being raised in, in an average American house, just coming up against all kinds of a lot of misconceptions about how to be in relationship, how to be in sex, how to show up as a man in the world. And I started off by just embarking on my own kind of interpersonal journey through travel and through culture and through learning about rites of passage, and then going on my own really deep journey of personal growth in the men's movement and going through my own initiations and we're really working on myself, having a teacher, working with coaches, a lot of travels to India and a lot of really deep, intensive work, that was inspired by my own suffering, which is usually what prompts us to want to have a change or have some sort of transformation. So I was blessed in a lot of ways of having a really amazing teacher and being involved in men's groups and learning a lot. And that just brought me to a place of feeling confident enough to support other men in their journey. I've been through the proverbial, or shall I say the stereotypical divorce and with the kids and all the suffering. And, so that's what drove me to do my own inner journey, my own personal work. And now I'm showing up to support other men in their process.
Well, one of the things I love about what you have is that you have this awesome program called The New Masculine. Tell us a little more about that, and why specifically do men need to embrace the new masculine?
Yeah, and the new masculine is quite a term. It can be confusing. I think that the first thing to do is to start off by looking at what the old model of masculinity is. I like to start there because men can kind of connect with that more easily. So the old model of masculinity, we might say, is men tend to be disconnected from nature. They tend to be disconnected from their bodies. There's a lack of kind of the want of introspection. There's a fear of intimacy. There's, the stereotypical man, Western man, would be a guy who tends to repress his emotions, not super in tune with his emotions. And all of these ways of being really add up to like addiction to power, addiction to wealth, addiction to, distraction. There tends to be a loss of compassion for other people when we're just caught up in our own suffering. And, you can see that, maybe later we'll talk about this, but we can definitely see that in how kids deal with this sort of thing, through gangs and through unhealthy activities. So in terms of the new masculine, I think it's important also to look at how we can reimagine these old thought models, such as God as male. That's kind of like the standard person's thinking is God is this guy in the sky. Part of this old way of being is embracing war, also embracing homophobia. That's a core issue that I see. And so many men turn to release these kinds of frustrations, as I talked about, through really unhealthy distractions like porn or conquering women, or, of course, drugs, alcohol, all those kinds of issues. So the new vision of masculinity is not really a specific prescription. I don't really believe in, like, there's a specific thing that makes you masculine, but the new vision of masculinity is very much men living from heart, like heart-centered courage, compassion. A big part is for men to live in integrity with their life mission. That's a big part of the work. So many men find relief in kind of being on purpose with their life. And, when men are living with purpose and on purpose, and with the courage to move through, like, old, outdated, kind of macho, tough guy image, and begin to embrace, like, a healthy masculine center. And a big part of that is what I see the new masculine as being committed to a personal evolution, like a personal development and growth. And, that in itself, just those last things that I named, are what is creating change in the world. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what I mean by the new masculine.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and I love hearing about this whole new masculine concept, because I'm seeing it more and more in our society, just subtly, with new actions that I would say the new modern man is taking. And again, I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing my observation as a student of life, striving to be a new masculine man. I'm curious, before we dive into a little more about some of your other, advice, who are some examples of, like, men you have seen that define this new masculine? They could be currently living, or they could be people that you have read about, because we all are a product of inspiring people, and role models, and people we learn from, we dream about, all those things. I'm just curious, like, who are some examples that come to your mind?
In terms of men that are kind of living in this new masculine paradigm?
Living or have lived it. Yeah, either currently living or lived.
There's so many. There really are so many. I mean, I could just go on and on. I tend to refer to kind of the men who were at the forefront of the modern men's movement. I'm talking about within the past 30-plus years. Of course, there's men before that, but Robert Bly is a really popular, or shall I say, kind of an icon of the men's movement. Sam Keane, great writer. Robert Moore is a really big one. I have all my men read Robert Moore's books, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Other men would be, let's see, Gay Hendricks, Gary Zukov. I'm sure you've heard of Neil Donald Walsh. The list goes on and on. Bill Calth is another guy who was at the forefront of this. He was one of the founders of the Mankind Project, which is probably one of the most popular men's programs out there. Like I said, I could name a lot of men that are out there doing this work. I mean, we just see it more and more. Like, I'm getting asked to do more and more festivals, more and more conferences, asking me to come out and do doing men's workshops. So yes, you're right. It's growing, it's proliferating, because as a whole, our society is evolving, and so as we evolve as a whole, men are coming out. I mean, that's why we're able to offer the programs that I do, and even have a career or a job as a men's coach. The only way I can do that is if men are coming out, and they're coming out more and more. So, I stand on the shoulders of these kind of giants, of these brilliant men that have come before and that have inspired me.
That's amazing, and I thank you for sharing that. And some of those names that you mentioned are people that I have studied too, and they're very, very helpful for others to hear as well in this interview. When I think about the new masculine, I mean, there's so many different parts of a man that men need to work on, and such as the emotional, the spiritual, the physical. I mean, how does the new masculine embrace specifically the emotional, spiritual, and physical aspects?
Good. Yes, very much work on those pieces. So we work on the emotional through digging into deep work, like shadow work, we can call learning, and learning to reframe our old concepts and conditioning. And I've seen some amazing shifts to this work. Shadow work's a really important part. Shadow work briefly is, as the great psychologist Carl Jung says, through our shadows, we act out in certain ways, and then when we act out in certain ways, things happen in our life, and we tend to write that off as fate. Like when people make decisions and things end in a certain way, people just tend to say, oh, well, that's just fate. But actually, through doing shadow work, meaning these unseen, unhidden aspects of ourselves, through maybe it's childhood trauma, childhood woundings, programmings from, maybe unhealthy parenting or society or cultures that one may grow up in, through digging into that and seeing how these affect us now, we then change our actions. And so then we kind of get into a little bit more of a proactive, co-creative relationship with our life, rather than just kind of being at the mercy of these unseen influencers. So that's a really important part of the work. The spiritual work is also a huge aspect. So many men that I work with don't really have any kind of spiritual grounding. They don't really have any spiritual connection. They don't really know where to go. They no longer identify with their religious upbringing, and they're kind of just lost in the sea of of nothing. And so helping men to begin to cultivate some sort of spiritual connection to something higher, kind of connecting to the greater whole, whatever you want to call that, the universe, God, spirit, divine, you can call it, the great intelligence, you can call it the energy of life, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it. But I see that as a absolutely crucial part, because if you remember, one of the first things I said, like this old model of masculinity, is men being disconnected from the earth. We live in concrete, we don't connect with the earth, we don't connect with nature, and that can be a really huge source for people to have a spiritual connection. And then, of course, the physical aspect goes without saying. To embody healthy masculinity, embodiment means you have to be in a physical relationship with some form of, like a confident man. If we look at archetypes of the healthy masculine, like the warrior or the king, like being able to be physical in your body, but having some intention behind that physicality, working with your breath, doing yoga, doing Tai Chi, whatever kind of physical activity, you connect with. But it is an absolutely huge part of the work that I do. So, and that brings us kind of into the idea of sexuality. So if a man wants to be sexually kind of supercharged, doing this work is really crucial. Also, if they want, longevity in their life and to have that sort of strong libido throughout their life, it's important to learn about these different aspects and evolve yourself in your emotional mastery, evolve yourself in your spiritual connection, evolve yourself physically in how you are showing up in the world as a physical man. Taoists have used these things, like Taoists have used sex since ancient times as a tool to heal emotional, physical, and mental imbalances. And there's this idea, Taoist practice called sexual kung fu, and using this as a way to beat their opponents or athletes. Yeah, sexual kung fu. Cool. You learn to harness your sexual energy as a way to be, as you said, the best version of yourself. And so my whole thing, my whole work is all about practice. Like you don't excel in anything without practicing. You may have a natural talent, but to be the best version of yourself, it takes this inner exploration. It takes digging in and doing some work. And so that's what guides that come to me. That's what they engage in. They engage in personal growth work.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. I love that sexual kung fu thing. It's so yeah. I can totally you could do this whole video series on that, I bet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'm kind of curious. Diving into the whole aspects that you talked about. I mean, you talked about, the sex life and relationship work that many men, or I should say all men, need to constantly work on. I mean, what are some practices you recommend for help for being a better lover, just to be frank? Because out of all the things you've mentioned, I mean, I'm just representing every man in the nation hearing this call. Definitely, sex and love life and relationship building are all things that are the most important. What practices do you recommend? Actually, you know what? I'm going to change the question. What do you do? What are some habits, rituals that you do? Because I'm curious. I want to learn from the coach himself.
Well, God, I mean, in terms of, there's many routes. One is learning to cultivate your own sexual energy, and that's what I was referring to sexual kung fu. So I would say on a foundational level, like the first and foremost, most important thing is for a man to learn to be filled with breath. I mean, that's my main practice. And for guys that think that's just some sort of new agey, fluffy kind of unicorns and rainbows idea, it's absolutely not. If you look at men who stand in the most confidence in work and sex and in relationship, it's men who are filled with breath. We tend to see men that are disempowered or have low libido or insecurity in sex. They tend to be shallow breathers. And I definitely saw this in myself at the beginning of when I started learning about this, and that's my main practice, is breath practice. Long, deep belly breath, breathing in down the front of your body, expanding your breath. I mean, this is the foundational practice for a man to learn to be more present, and that's probably the number one thing that I practice is presence practice, learning to be more present, fully there for my partner, for my woman, and also for other people. When you're really present with someone, it completely shifts the space. It shifts the interaction, and absolutely in sex as well. So presence practice, this can happen through your breath, and even with your partner, like simple practices like connecting in the eyes. People tend to close their eyes and be disconnected and be focused on orgasm during the sexual experience, but there's so much potential available for people in sex. So connecting through the eyes, through connecting with the man, connecting with the woman through open eye contact, this can and tends to open your woman, and the more open she is, the more ecstatic men can experience sex. You know how we get really turned on when our women are turned on, right? If a woman's not into it, it's just kind of this, at the risk of sounding a little bit too blunt here, like a mutual masturbation, which is not a very ecstatic experience. It's just a way for a guy to blow off steam, and you're not even getting a 1/10% of what's available in the sexual act. So other simple little things is to approach your sexual practice with your partner. I would say first thing is breath, presence, connecting in the eyes, not having a goal in mind, not having your orgasm as the goal, either for your partner or for yourself, because you're losing out on the experience if your goal is to just have an orgasm or give your partner an orgasm. There's so many things I can go on and on and on. I would say one of the kind of the downfalls that a lot of couples fall into is this idea of same time, same place. They go to the same time, they have sex after a long day, they both work, they go to the bed, they do the same thing, and it's no wonder that there's kind of a lack of true depth and excitement. It just becomes this routine thing that you're doing. So for men, I always have them work on learning to do what I call preparing for the feminine. So it's really the man's job to prepare the space for the feminine, prepare himself for the feminine, create the environment, and how we have more intimate and deep sexual interaction with our women, since women are creatures of intimacy, is to create the environment for that intimacy to happen. Lose the goal or the attachment to intercourse. Sex doesn't have to be intercourse. Lose the goal and the attachment to having to have an orgasm, but rather shift your focus to creating more intimacy. And then through that experience, men can have multiple orgasms. They can last for much longer periods of time and really experience greater depths of ecstasy and orgasm. So hopefully that'll give the guys a few good.
Yeah, no. I love hearing that, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. Along those lines, I mean, what's your experience with things like tantra and forms of meditation that could create that orgasmic experience without actually having physical sex?
If men are into that sort of thing, for men that are into exploring tantra, I mean, absolutely, it's a when I speak of tantra, I'm talking about traditional tantra, like the traditional tantra from India and from Tibet. The tantra that we see in the West, we would call neo-tantra. That's not my practice. I come from a traditional tantric background. I don't really bring this kind of language when I'm working with men, only if a man brings it up and he's interested. But for guys that are interested in that, yeah, absolutely, bringing in a real depth of this want to have a deep spiritual connection with your partner. Of course, there's all kinds of practice, meditation practices, learning to bypass ejaculation, but it's not just the idea of not ejaculating. You have to be able to learn how to digest and sort of circulate your sexual energy.
So Zat, I mean, a lot of what you're saying is so amazing, and clearly we want to share the amazing work that you're doing to help transform men and also help women find you too, because why should a woman contact you for their man? I'm curious. Share a great case study if you don't mind.
I just had a woman probably about 2 weeks ago contact me. Someone had referred her to me, and she is in a situation with her husband where she is terribly unsatisfied in the relationship. Sadly, I hear this quite frequently from women where their men they're not progressing, they're not changing, they're not developing in the relationship. Women tend to be, kind of on the personal growth path and working on themselves, but their men are not interested. They say, I'm fine the way I am, I don't need changing, I don't need fixing. And they get to a place where they don't know what to do anymore. And so this woman reached out to me and she said, I really want my man to work with you or to sign up for your program. What can I do? And the honest truth is all you can do is inspire him and lovingly make suggestions. But, women cannot get their men to do anything. The man has to have a sort of an innate desire to grow himself, to develop as a human, not just as a man, but as a human. And so I told her, I said, here's my email, here's my phone number. You could just invite him, say, hey, I know we've been having these challenges in our relationship. A friend of mine told me about this guy who's a men's coach, and if you're interested, here's his website. The guy never contacted me, and she got back to me and she said he's just not interested. And so she said she has to decide what she's going to do now in her relationship because nothing's changing, except for her. She's changing, but the relationship isn't shifting. So it can be challenging. A woman cannot, and neither can a man, tell his partner, to change. You can get to a place in your relationship where you can say, this is no longer working for me at all, and I'm no longer willing to be in the relationship in the current structure, the current format, the current way that it is. So something needs to shift, and a woman can have an ask. She can ask her man, this is what I'm asking from you. If I don't get this, I don't know how I can continue in the relationship. And that sort of thing does happen. I mean, relationships end all the time. Divorce rates are so high. So you can't force your man to do it. All you can do is inspire him, suggest, and if the man's interested and he talks with me, I've had that happen a few times where a woman has suggested and the man comes and we do some work, and it absolutely shifts the relationship radically. I had a woman sending me emails, and she was even emailing my partner, my woman, saying, thank you so much. Our relationship is completely changed because the man had kind of an awakening, you know, and he had a new outlook on how to show up in a relationship.
Amazing. Well, Zat, I mean, you and I can go on for hours and hours, and I love what I'm hearing, and I want more, and I know when this interview gets shared with the DreamItAlive community, people are going to want to know more, too. I know you have an upcoming program. Why don't you tell us a little about the upcoming program to conclude this interview?
Sure. Yeah, I am collaborating with two visionary coaches. It'll be the three of us, really amazing, powerful men, Robert Kendall and Ken Blackman. Robert Kendall co-created the organization called One Taste, which is quite a popular thing around the United States and growing into Europe. You've heard of orgasmic meditation. So Robert is the co-creator of One Taste Orgasmic Meditation. He's my co-collaborator. And then Ken Blackman is a senior trainer for One Taste. And we created a program called the New Masculine Program. It's a 6-week online men's transformational course and a 3-day live event. So we're going to be journeying together for 6 weeks. Men are going to be on a weekly call with us. They're also going to get an individual call with one of us throughout the month. We're going to have smaller pods where pod leaders are going to be working with men. We call it a crash course into the new masculine way of being: confidence, sex, purpose, and money. And it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have a 3-day event in this beautiful little oasis in Los Angeles where we're going to be together for 3 days, just really digging into some powerful work, and men will undoubtedly have radical epiphanies and transformations. And with the three of us bringing our 60 years of experience together, it's really exciting. So we have a lot of men signed up, and the course starts April 2nd. And I just advise men to sign up as soon as possible while there's still an early bird price happening. But if you even have the slightest inclination to get a recharge, to get new insights, and also to be in the brotherhood of conscious men, that's one of the biggest pieces, is to be in this brotherhood of other just ordinary guys that are looking to completely transform their life in the area of confidence and sex and purpose and money and women and relationships. So it's the website is razorsedgeproject.com. That's razors with an S, edgeproject.com. And I'd love to see you there. I'd love to see all the men there.
I will. You can count on me being there. Well, Zat, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you so much for offering this amazing program. We'll make sure to share this when we promote this interview, and keep on making the world be a better place.
And my website too. Should I say my website?
Please do.
At zatbaraka.com. ZATBARAKA.com for anyone that has questions or wants to know more about my own personal work. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you, your foresight in bringing this conversation out to the masses.
My honor, man. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.